Good morning, fellow patriots. Thanks for checking in with Strictly Speaking Unfiltered here on the Rumble channel, and we're pushing this out. Now we finally got a new YouTube channel going as well. I mean, I've had it for a while. I just never used it for anything other than looking at videos. But we're broadcasting live on Rumble. We're broadcasting live on YouTube, and I think it's being pushed out to Facebook as well, my Strictly Speaking This Week Facebook page. And we're expanding our reach. That is what the goal is. We're up to 832 followers. 3 days ago, we had, 200 or something like that. So in 3 days of technically, actually, in just two shows being broadcast, we've tripled, I think, in size. That's a great start. That is where we need to be. And I'm very, very excited for you to be here with us. So if you're among those followers, make sure you become a subscriber as well to our channel so that you can make sure you know every time we go live and every time we put new content up. Sometimes we're going to put up recorded shows, sometimes special interviews outside of the regular broadcast time. And I'll be honest with you, too, as we get started on this 17th morning, you know how I start my shows, 17th morning of the 12th month in the year of our Lord, 2025. I'm going to be honest with you about something else, too. The time of the broadcast may be in play. I like to do the morning time slot that we've been doing for the last 11 years. So this is where I want to be for you because you're used to that. But we may end up being on tape delay from the previous night. We may be doing live shows in the evenings coming up soon that you'll be able to watch in replay the next morning because of, well, certain needs, quite frankly, certain circumstances. Obviously, as you know, online radio or podcasting, if you will, it's not corporate. Meaning it's not sponsored, meaning it's not paid. It is completely funded by patriots. We're self-funded. That's what we do. And so we're working very, very hard to make sure we give you a product that makes you want to be a part of that. And you've been doing an amazing job so far, but there may be some necessities that have to be taken care of during the middle of the day. And then we may end up having to do this show live in the evenings. And then to air for you the next day at 10 o'clock or at 9 o'clock or whatever the case might be. So I'm going to be interested in your feelings on that too when you get into the chat today. And I'm really getting more used to it. Today is day 3, so I'm getting more used to trying to do multiple things at once. Running the show, bringing up the guests, putting on the graphics, sharing the videos, hosting the show, doing the content and so forth, checking the chat box. So we'll be doing all of those things. Not the chat box, I guess we'll call it the chat. We'll be doing all of those things, but I'll be interested in your thoughts. Would you be okay with it? And would you be able to listen to it in the evenings? You know, and we're talking, 7 to 9 or something of that nature. And then again, with a replay during the morning. So there's all kinds of different options, but we're building it and we're glad you're here. All right, enough of the personal stuff, but just don't forget, like, follow, and subscribe. Like the channel, follow the channel, subscribe to the channel, share the channel. Maybe I got to add 4 things. Share it with other people. Copy the link to this channel and share it with people in your email message or your email address books, 12 of your social media followers, and so forth. Like I said, I think we've tripled in size in 2 days of broadcasts. That's good. We need to do that again and again and again and again over the course of the next, couple of months. That's the only way we're going to be able to make this work and be able to reach as many people as possible with the messages we have to try to save this republic. There's no other way to say that. By the way, you notice I got the, what I don't have though is this. All right, hold on a second. Radio on the fly or podcasting on the fly. What I do want is to make sure that you can see this without a glare. I dressed up the background as I try. Yesterday, I told you I had it kind of set up a little bit incorrectly. Those are the 2 paintings I talked about yesterday that were done by a phenomenal artist named Ray Simon. One of those, the full-size painting, the actual painted portrait of President Trump there. That one is, by the way, that one is in the White House. And then the other one, the Charlie Kirk extraordinary work by Ray Simon, is in Mar-a-Lago, hanging in Trump's house. I was gifted both of those prints of those paintings, and I put them up yesterday, but they just didn't fit right in the frame. I was blocking Trump completely where I'm sitting in my studio, And Charlie Kirk was up and off half of the screen, so I wanted to fix those to make sure you could see those. So it's all dressed up now, and I took the glare off of it too, so hopefully that makes it look a little bit better. But really, really just want to send the message that this is what we're all about. Unapologetic believers in what Charlie preached, faith, freedom, and family, what I've been saying for a very long time, maybe not with the clarity that Charlie was able to do. And of course, we continue to support President Trump. All right, so we're going to get started here. First of all, you should know that I've got two guests today. Coming up in about 25 minutes or so, we're going to talk with Dr. John R. Lott Jr., the founder and the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. He is a phenomenal researcher. His primary field is researching and economics, but he is also well known as being one of the most knowledgeable Second Amendment supporters in the country. He digs inside of statistics to prove some of the gun lies, the anti-gun lobby and their lies. He's just phenomenal. And now that, and we'll do this in the top 10 at 10, you got a bunch of lefties screaming for more gun control because what happened at Brown and because of what happened in Australia, believe it or not. Dr. John Lott is going to respond to that. He wrote a piece that's running in the Federalist today. Yeah, he sent this to me yesterday. He said, I think it was for the Federalist. I'll confirm with him when he comes on. But he'll be on with me in about a half an hour at about 10:30 Eastern time. And then at 11 o'clock, it's the debut of our good friend, Peter Kirsanow, attorney, longest-serving member of the United States Commission on Civil Rights in the history of said commission. He's about to be appointed to yet another 6-year term. The man is tireless. He's just a warrior and a champion. And he's been on with me every week, just like Jim Jordan yesterday. Kirsanow's been on with me for about 11 years weekly, usually every Tuesday. Today's coming on a Wednesday, but we'll probably work that out where he's on at the same day every week, so you can expect Peter Kirsanow. That'll be at 11. We're going to talk to Pete about all the news in the cycle today, but he is also going to answer questions. We used to do that on the radio. Occasionally we would say, let's open it up to phone calls. What do you want to know from the brilliant mind of Peter Kirsanow? And it didn't always time up because we had, limited time. Now we have basically unlimited time. No commercial breaks unless I want to take one. No clock to follow, no corporate micromanagement. Pete and I can just go, and he can answer your questions directly from the chat. So make sure you are getting into the chat on the Rumble page if you can. If you're watching this on YouTube, I don't know if I can monitor a YouTube chat at the same time or how that works. Again, newbie, figuring it out. But certainly on Rumble, we will monitor the chat, and you can ask your questions of Kirsanow, and we'll get them up. And Pete's unique. He's probably the only person who wouldn't even know what a chat is on this, because Pete is smarter than the rest of us and never, ever got social media. Every time I've talked to Peter, and it's been a long time, every time we talk about, did you see this on X, or did you see what Trump posted on True Social? I don't have social media. And it's not because he's boomer, like the younger generation would say, okay, boomer, you can't keep up with tech. He can keep up with tech fine. He chooses not to because he's smarter than the rest of us. Because I'll look like a giant hypocrite when I say this, but I don't care. Social media is the devil. I'm a hypocrite because I'm using it. Rumble is a form of it. The chat room is a form of it. X, on which I have an account, is a form of it. Facebook, Instagram, all of it. They're all evil. Am I breaking new news there? You recognize how many people are harmed by social media. You recognize how many companies have been damaged by social media. You recognize how many people have committed suicide because of social media pressures. You realize how many kids have been indoctrinated into the trans, woke mind virus, that evil influence because of online influencers in social media telling kids they don't have to be what they are. Social media is straight up evil. I mean, it is. Can it be used for good in some ways? Yes. That's why we're here. We're trying to use it for a positive reason, to inform, to educate, to kind of grassroots collaborate and communicate about what we have to do to win the fights at the legislative level, to win the fights at the electoral level. We've got to inform and educate one another. And so we can unite by way of social media. So it can be used for good. There's no question. That's how we use it. Most of us anyway. But you do realize that the world became less safe, I think, for people when social media was created and invented, and everyone had an audience of people willing to be manipulated, willing to be influenced to do bad things, willing to do, I mean, I remember when my children were young and my daughter was, I don't want to say maybe 6th or 7th grade or something like that. And there was, I don't know if it was Instagram back then or if it was Twitter or whatever, but these kids would post pictures of themselves on social media, whether it might have been X, I don't know. But they would post these pictures of themselves, young, talking about like junior high age girls. And then they would look and wait. And if they didn't get enough pluses or hearts or likes or comments saying you're beautiful, they would quickly take them down because they felt I'm not pretty and nobody thinks so. If they thought so, they would be saying that to me, and they're not saying it to me. And do you know what that does? That is soul crushing to young kids. Self-esteem matters. And young kids were putting themselves out there and asking the internet writ large to judge them. Judge me and affirm my worth. Judge me and affirm that I look as good as I hope I do. And if you don't judge me, I'm going to take that down because obviously it's ugly. And then the child begins to feel I'm ugly. That's just evil. I mean, like I said, I'm glad that we can have communications with, people like Vice President Vance and President Trump, who uses social media a little bit differently than maybe anybody else who's ever been in an elected office. He just uses to start flame wars or to respond to flame wars, either way. And some of these things, yeah, good. I'm glad that there is a platform, I guess, for people to be heard in such ways. But I just think social media as a whole, on balance, is evil. And again, I wear the badge of hypocrisy here because I use it. But I feel like if I don't use it, it's even worse. Then it becomes, if we don't use it to communicate, collaborate, coordinate, etc., with one another, like I said, to improve things in our communities, and we do that, and in our state, and we do that, and at the federal and national level, we do that too. If we don't use it and make the good in it come out, then it is beyond evil, and we are just we're lost. So that's just the only way I can describe it. But that's what we're here for, and I want to use it today. And in fact, I want to use it right now, and I want to share with you the yeah, I made that graphic. Top 10. Okay, AI made that graphic for me, but I told it what to do. Top 10 at 10. For now, it's the top 10 at 10:15, but nonetheless, we're going to do it. All right, top 10 stories that we're working on today. The Brown University shooter is still at large. A complete, total mystery. How this can be is anybody's guess. They don't have a clue who this person is. Who walks into an elite university, goes into a building, shoots up a classroom, kills 2 people, injures 9 more, and then is able to disappear into the ether? And they've got new videos that they say of the quote unquote person of interest, some chubby looking dude sauntering around in various places wearing one of the shame masks that we were all forced to wear during COVID. And that's all they've got. And at the press conference updates yesterday, the local police in Providence, the campus police, the mayor, and then FBI resources, what are they saying? Hey, we're stumped. You know what? If y'all recognize the way this person here walks and you think it might help us, call us. We've got nothing. It's not like we're following up on several really good leads. We've got a beat on this guy. We just need a couple little pieces of assistance. No, it's just like we're dead in the water. We got nothing. Help us find him. Can you do it public? It's bizarre. We'll get into that a little bit with Kirsten now too. Number 2 on the top 10 at 10. Did the shooter in that case yell Allahu Akbar? This is a big story, actually, because it appears, according to one of the eyewitnesses who was in the room when the shooting happened, he did indeed do that. 5 witnesses claim they heard him yell something, although they have not been as clear as to what it is. And the university and the police will not confirm this. And this is, of course, for obvious reasons. Town Hall says There are too many witnesses saying the same thing. So the next time this circus comes before the podium, they better have an answer. Questions remain, such as how the shooter was able to enter the building and whether or not he yelled what he yelled. There were reports that the suspect might have targeted a class taught by a Jewish professor who was not in attendance that evening. Her TA, teaching assistant, was the one overseeing that finals prep class. But there were at least 5 people who heard him yell something. One of them said it was Allahu Akbar, which of course is the infamous Muslim and Arabic God is great statement that happens before they martyr themselves or before they kill other people. And they won't acknowledge that. Why? For obvious reasons, because then all of our focus would be and should be on what? Radical Islamic terrorism. Instead, what does the left want to make it about? Guns. Guns did this. Not a crazy wild Muslim or Muslim supporter. Guns did this. That's how they want this to be. So they're not talking about what he yelled. They're not even confirming he yelled anything at the podium. But they are certainly talking about guns. And I'm going to give you some video on that. Jazz Hands Tim Walz is all over it, which is just an embarrassing thing to say, but he is. Jazz Hands Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, the failed vice presidential candidate, screaming about guns. He is livid that there are firearms, that the Second Amendment exists, and that we have firearms available to people in this country to protect themselves. I'll get into him in a minute. Number 3 in the top 10 at 10. Buckle up and get ready tonight. Live address of the nation to the nation by President Trump. He wants to basically hold a from the Oval Office rally telling everybody how awesome things are. Literally, I mean, they're promoting it that way. He's going to talk about the incredible accomplishments of the first 11 months of the Trump presidency. I'm fine with that. He needs to, because the fake news media is out there continuing to spin stories about how the sky is falling. We got some rough economic news in terms of jobs, although we have some other good news that they did not report, which I'm going to have to share with you because I have them. But the unemployment number went up from 4.4 to 4.6%. In the announcement yesterday, 64,000 jobs were gained in November, which is a number that's lower than what some people were hoping for. But again, we should point out, with the government shutdown happening, there were a whole lot of things that were off in the month of November. So there were some economic stressors. There's no question about that. And, the affordability crisis that the left is always talking about is something President Trump wants to address tonight. He's going to address probably the nuking of the narco-terrorist boats, the blockade around Venezuela, which is a story, and a lot of other things. But he wants to basically kind of calm the waters and reassure the people that things are good and things are only going to get better in 2026. He's going to lay that all out tonight. By the way, he's right about that too. Besant has spoken on that, and we'll talk about that. What else do we have? Number 4. Wow, number 4 got abbreviated. I stopped typing after the word former. I don't remember what that one was going to be. I'll skip it. I'll come back to it. Number 5 is Vanity Fair slandering Susie Wiles, Trump's chief of staff. And I've got video on this too of J.D. Vance responding to that Vanity, because according to Vanity Fair, the way they wrote the article, Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, is basically just destroying the Trump administration, the cabinet, the president, Vice President Vance, Secretary Rubio, and all on down the line. She has come out and saying, whoa, 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 whoa. That article that you are reading reflects nothing of the conversation I had with Vanity Fair. They are taking choice lines, isolating them, absent context, and making it seem as though I am somehow, some way dissatisfied with this president. She is just slamming Vanity Fair for she should never have sat, quite frankly, with a rag like that, a left-wing rag like that. But she did, and now there's the fallout. And I got Vice President Vance on tape. I'll give you that. Number 6 was Venezuela surrounded by the Trump blockade. Trump has essentially ordered a blockade so that no tankers can come up and approach Venezuela, because the president, of course, is committed to getting the drugs out of this country. And he knows that these tankers are being loaded up in many cases with drugs, and then they're, veering off course wherever they're supposed to be going, where they're going with other tankers and offloading some of their product to the other tankers. And then those, unbeknownst to anybody else, are arriving at American ports. And here come the deadly drugs. President Trump is committed to wiping out the scourge of fentanyl and heroin and cocaine and everything else that continues to come in from these narco terrorist countries, with their narco-terrorist leaders like Maduro. So that's a big story. Number 7 on the top 10 at 10. I didn't get to this yesterday, but I really want to. I'm going to take on lawyers a little bit when we talk about this story. We all remember the tragic story, at least if you're a Northeast Ohioan, you remember the tragic story from last year in which a little 3-year-old boy was killed and his mother was stabbed. They were both stabbed by this lunatic outside in the parking lot of the Giant Eagle in North Olmsted, Ohio. Just a nut. This heavy-set, mentally ill black woman walked into a Giant Eagle with brandishing a big knife, like a big long kitchen knife, big blade, looking for somebody to stab. And then she walked back out and went out to the parking lot and found, these 2 people. And the little boy was killed. The mother was wounded. And now a lawyer has convinced them, you know who's responsible for this? Giant Eagle's responsible for this. They filed a lawsuit against Giant Eagle. We're going to talk about torts and tort reform, maybe, because there are some, and then maybe not. I had a conversation yesterday with a great patriot who said maybe there is something here from a legal perspective. What I mean by going after the lawyers should be obvious. I'll talk about this with Kirsten now too. I guarantee you that the surviving mom and the father who lost their child didn't think to themselves, you know who's to blame for all of this? It's Giant Eagle. It's the store. It's their fault that somebody came in with a knife and then in the parking lot stabbed, us and killed our son. We're going to sue Giant Eagle. It never works that way. Some lawyer, or probably many lawyers, came to them and said, what a horrible thing happened to you. Let's make somebody pay. How about the deep-pocketed giant grocery store? I got a problem with that. I've got a problem with a lot of things in the story, which of course is the fact that this innocent child was killed in such a barbaric and brutal way, and mental health needs to be addressed in this country. I feel I can't use a modifier to describe how much empathy for the family. It's horrible. It's off the charts. I can't imagine it myself. But making the grocery store pay for it, they didn't do it. We got to talk about that. Number 8, awfuls attacking elderly lady for a Charlie Kirk shirt. Did you see this one? I might have to stick this one in now. What I'd like to do is just run down the top 10 at 10 and then go back and discuss the items in depth as the show goes on. But I might want to give this one to you now if I have it loaded, which I think I do. Yeah. This is just horrible. I'm going to play this for you here. Again, let me get it set up for you. This is at a Target store in, I don't have the city at the drop of a hat here. I apologize, but I want you to listen and watch this horrific exchange with this awful. Do you know, we talked about this. You know what an awful is, right? An awful is an affluent, white, female liberal. White liberal women are the bane of this existence. They may be the, quite frankly, they may be the arch villain in our story. Okay, they're the arch villains. So you see the thing on the left there? That thing attacked the innocent elderly woman verbally, not physically, I should be clear, that you see on the right at a Target store. Let me pull up the actual caption of the tweet too. Meet Michaela Ponce. Ponce works for the Enloe nonprofit healthcare system. Most likely, it's in California. Not a surprise, I suppose. She is an anti-racism activist who decided to post a video of herself chastising and calling a Target employee effing stupid, accusing her of supporting let's finish that up there, supporting a racist because the staffer was wearing a Charlie Kirk Freedom shirt. Coincidentally, by the way, yeah, that's the shirt that I have. It's not that one, but I'm wearing the Freedom shirt too for this broadcast. I wear this actually a lot because it matters to me. Anyway, I want you to watch what happened here. And for the delicate ears of some, if you have a problem with the F word, you're going to have a problem with this video because it is filled with it. This is what awfuls do. White feminist, not even feminist, but white liberal females. This is what they do. Watch.
Why?
They let you wear that shirt here?
Yes. Why? Why are you taking my picture?
Why are you wearing that shirt? You're working. It's not
It's
a
a
Target
red
shirt.
shirt. I can wear any red shirt.
It's not a plain shirt.
It doesn't have to be
It's a Charlie Kirk shirt.
Yes. Oh, yes, I know.
Are you fucking stupid?
No.
Why the fuck would you wear that? You're at work at Target. That's not a Target shirt. It's not a plain red shirt. You support a racist.
It's not racist.
You support a racist.
He's not a racist.
Yes, he is.
No, he's not.
Yes, he fucking is.
I'm sorry, but I'm not going to stand here and argue with you.
You're not. You should go get your manager. You should not be allowed to wear that at work. Unacceptable. Unfucking acceptable.
That's your opinion.
No, the opinion is he's a fucking racist and you support him.
That's your opinion, ma'am.
And you should not be allowed to wear that. This is going to be taken above your fucking head. That's insane. Insane.
Have a nice day.
In fucking insane. Piece of shit.
So, yeah, there you go. You understand why we say what we do about awfuls. White liberal women trying to impose their views and their hate on innocent people simply based on a red hat. How many times have you seen it on airplanes? How many times have you seen it in restaurants? Somebody wearing a MAGA hat being attacked and screamed at, and sometimes having the hat ripped off their heads. It's almost always females. Because if it's males that rip the hat off of the head of a MAGA supporter or something like that, chances are they're taking one to the throat. Females, you can't hit them. So they just film themselves, or somebody else does, or whatever, them attacking people for, having beliefs that are different than theirs. It is repugnant and it is disgusting. And the good part of this, if there is any, is that this was noted, because this has been shared all over social media, by Turning Point, by Charlie Kirk's organization. Andrew Colvett, who is now, I guess, what is he, CEO? No, let's see, executive producer of the Charlie Kirk Show, and he's whatever his other role is in with TPUSA. Andrew Colvett saw this and tweeted immediately, if anyone can DM a way to get in touch with this wonderful woman who was needlessly harassed for honoring Charlie, I would love to personally thank her and send her some gifts. Others, some with TPUSA and some outside of it, are doing the same thing and wanting to start a give, send, go for her to support her just because she was victimized by these disgusting and repugnant people. And I was incensed when I saw that. If that had been my mother or my grandmother, I mean, I don't know what I would be doing to find out where I can find Michaela Ponce so that I can give her a little bit of a piece of my mind. She's picking on an elderly woman there and cursing at her and so forth. Let's see if she can debate with somebody who's ready for it. And by the way, what a classy woman the poor woman was for walking away from that the way she did. Number 9 is going back to something previously with the Brown University shooting, and that is leftists blaming guns, not shooters, and not the ideology. If it was an Allahu Akbar radical fundamentalist, Muslim who did this, they want to focus on the weapon, which is why we're going to talk to John Arlott here in a moment. And then number 10 on the top 10 and 10 were some libs. It's almost as bad as what you just saw, maybe worse. Some libs say they would rather die than have their life saved if they were in an emergency by a MAGA. And I apologize. I'm trying to see if my guest is in the queue and waiting and ready to go here, and he is not yet at the second. So we're going to try to establish contact with John. And I hope there's not a time zone thing here because, I just heard a bleep. That means he might be waiting. Look at that. You talk about on cue. That's perfect. On cue, John Arlott Jr. literally drops in right as I was about to say I'm going to have to reach out to John Arlott and see if we had a time zone issue. John Arlott Jr. is the president and the founder of the Crime Prevention Research Center. He is an economist by trade. He is a researcher extraordinaire, and he's one of the most knowledgeable people in the country on the issue of the Second Amendment and our rights and gun violence. John, good morning, my friend. How are you, sir?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Fantastic. It's so good to see you. You were right on time. I was afraid that we might have missed our connection there. I was about to message you, so thank you for making it in this morning. So, John, you've written a piece, and we're going to do 2 things here. In fact, we may do three things here.
Okay.
John, because you wrote a piece for, was this Federalist today? The one that you
Yeah,
sent?
it's out at the Federalist today.
Federalist, and you can make sure to read John's work on the Federalist, and he's on a lot of different sites. And go to his website, which is crimeresearch.org, crimeresearch.org. That's for the Crime Prevention Research Center. And then follow John on his social media. Just look for John Arlott Jr. So we're going to talk about Australia because that's what you wrote about, but then we're going to talk about the Brown shooting as well, Brown University, and the reaction by most of the American anti-gun Democrats, wanting to enact stricter gun control laws, as they do every time there is something like this that happens. But then I'm also going to ask you, John, to get into your racial crime research, which you have done, because Jasmine Crockett is back at it again, screaming that 80% of violent crimes in the United States are committed by white supremacists. White male supremacists. And
Is
I
it
know
only 80%? I thought it was 100%.
So she's off the rails again. I want to get you on all three of those things in the course of this half hour we have together, John. So let's start with Australia, because most everybody knows that Australia was gun free. And they really clamped down on guns. They have a strict gun control policy there. A few people are allowed to have guns under certain circumstances, but we're told that gun crimes don't happen in Australia. But yet we just saw 15 people getting shot at Bondi Beach there by a radical lunatic father and son.
Actually, it was 58 people who were shot.
I'm sorry, 15 killed.
15 people who were murdered, and then another 43 who were wounded.
Thank you for the clarity. Yeah, 15 people killed, I should have said. So, John, how is this happening when Australia was completely gun-free, we were told?
Well, Australia didn't ban all guns. What it did was in 96 and 97 had a confiscation where they confiscated about 1 million guns that people owned. So the number of guns that were privately owned went from about 3.5 million down to about 2.5 million. So that's about almost a 30% drop that's there. There's been all sorts of people who claim that was responsible for a 50% drop in firearm and homicides and firearm suicides. But it's really statistical malpractice that they've had for making that claim. That's being kind, I think. And that's because what they look at is just the simple before and after averages. And there's many times that could be very misleading. So let me give you a simple example. Let's say you had a perfectly straight line that was falling over the whole period of time. You could pick any point along that line, and the after average is going to be below the before average that's there. But you look at it and you say, well, it's falling at a certain rate beforehand, and it's falling at the same exact rate afterwards. I look at it and I say, well, the after average is below the before average. That's true. But it's really hard for me to see any real change that's occurring in terms of an impact of the change on whatever crime rate you're looking at there. And the thing to understand with Australia is that for 15 years prior to the 97 confiscation, both firearm homicides and firearm suicides were falling fairly consistently over that whole period of time. What you'd want to look at then is say, well, okay, so it's falling beforehand, but is it falling at a faster rate or a slower rate? Is there some discontinuity in the line that's there to go and see whether or not it actually had an impact on anything? And in fact, if you look at it, firearm homicides stopped falling for about 8 years or so after the confiscation occurred. And firearm suicides continue to fall, but at a much slower rate. So I look at it and I say, well, so it's falling and then it stops falling. That seems to me to be a bad effect rather than a benefit from it. But there's another problem that's there too, and that is only looking at firearm homicides or firearm suicides. For suicides, there's lots of different ways for people to commit suicides. just because even if you could actually stop them from committing firearm suicides, the question is, what do they switch to other ways? What happens to total suicides? And so when you look at that, you in fact find that total suicides soared by about 20% immediately after the confiscation that was there. And I'm not going to go and argue that that the confiscation caused suicides to go up by so much, but it's surely not consistent with what the claim would be. And if you look at total homicides, they are constant. They don't go down at all. And so those are just some of the problems that you have with the claim there. And if anything, I mean, I'm sure it would say that this didn't go and solve the problem. It may have made it worse. But there's one other big problem that occurs there. So what gun control advocates would predict is that you should have had an immediate sharp drop in firearm homicides and suicides. But the thing is, which obviously didn't occur, but the thing is, one thing you have to realize is that people could go out and buy guns again after this. And by 2010, if not a little bit earlier, the gun ownership rate in Australia was above, clearly well above what it was before the confiscation. And if that's the case, you should have seen an immediate sharp drop and then
Sure.
over time as the gun ownership was increasing. You don't see that either. So, it's just, it doesn't, in fact, you look at something like armed robbery. Armed robbery actually shoots up as soon as the ban occurs, the confiscation occurs, and then it falls, which is the exact opposite that you should have seen from the gun control advocates. So there are lots of problems, but yet, you have Chuck Schumer just on the floor of the Senate on Monday, making the claim that, how important and effective the gun control laws were in Australia. Over the years, you've had Obama, you've had Hillary Clinton, you've had Joe Biden, all pointing to this as kind of the lodestar that people should aim for in terms of gun control regulations that are there and how good they are. The New York Times, the Washington Post, others have had story after story making this false claim.
So, John, Dr. John R. Lott Jr., let's do comparisons. This is a part of your article that's in the Federalist this morning. Comparisons to the United States and other countries, because this is, of course, what so many. In fact, you mentioned Schumer. Let me play this clip from Jazz Hands, Tim Walz, real quick. Tim Walz raging about guns and gun violence because of what happened in Australia that we're talking about right now, but also the Brown shooting and more. I want you to listen to what he has to say, and then we'll get your response to this. So here's, let me make sure that I'm sharing the video with you, which is going to take one more step. And I think I have that ready to go. Yeah, here we go. So this is Tim Walz. Give this a watch.
June 14th. They've been saying it since that horrific day at Annunciation. They continue to say it. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. And I've traveled across the state. These folks have traveled across the states. I've said in town halls, the deep sense of frustration, the deep sense of anger, the deep sense of grief and loss around gun violence. And to watch people stand and deflect and word salad about everything of this, there's too damn many guns and the wrong types of guns on the street. And I don't want to hear how do you define assault weapon. I damn sure can assign what it is and describe what it is and tell you what it does. And unfortunately, we have a whole bunch of parents now who know a lot more about what these weapons were meant to do.
All right. So, John, let's respond to that part first. He's not done. I've got another clip from him that I'm going to share, but let's get that part first. He wants to sign an order, banning certain types of guns, stricter gun control. And he says, and I don't care what kind they are. If I call it an assault weapon, I know it is when I see one. How do you ban something that you cannot define? And isn't any gun that is used to kill another person, isn't it something you have just assaulted them with? So what do you make of that?
It's pretty ridiculous. Look, we're talking about semi-automatic guns. 85% of the guns that are sold in the United States are semi-automatic guns. Just so people understand, you basically have three different types of guns. You have guns which are manually loaded, which is basically what was used in the attacks in Australia, where after you fire a shot, you have to physically load another bullet into the chamber. You could see the guy in Australia with a rifle basically putting the bolt in after each time. Literally just took him a couple seconds to do it. But and then you have semi-automatic guns, which one pull the trigger, one bullet comes out, and then it reloads itself. And then you have fully automatic guns, which as long as you have the trigger pulled, you will have rounds coming out of the gun there. And for mass public shootings in the United States, they're pretty much exclusively, not exclusive, but overwhelmingly semi-automatic guns. And about 15% of the mass public shootings involve a rifle of any type. Now, what happens with so-called assault weapons is they look at certain guns based on how they look. When Dianne Feinstein's staff put the original assault weapons ban together, they basically went through catalogs of guns to go and pick guns that they thought looked particularly scary. But they fired the same bullets with the same rapidity, doing the same damage as other semi-automatic hunting rifles. In fact, the AR-15 that gets demonized so much is a relatively small caliber hunting rifle. You can't even use it for shooting deer in most states. It's a .223 caliber round, which caliber essentially just means how many inch diameter. So it's a little bit less than a quarter of an inch in diameter, the round. People probably heard of .22 caliber rifles, which is typically about the smallest caliber rifle that you have. The reason why deer hunting isn't allowed with it is because they're worried that the round will simply injure it but won't kill the animal, and so the animal will be injured and wander off and suffer. It doesn't make any sense to ban guns based on how they look rather than how they function. You will frequently hear this phrase, military style weapon. And what military style is referring to is just how the gun looks cosmetically on the outside. It looks like a military weapon, but it doesn't function like a military weapon. Military weapons have essentially machine gun aspects to them. They can allow a burst, one pull the trigger, you could get, 3 rounds fired, or it could be fully automatic. So anyway,
it's especially when you talk about the function, if you're criticizing the guns based on their appearance and, calling them assault weapons or military style, if you don't know how they function. And Tim Walz being one of the guys who's, leading this, this new criticism and call for more gun control. We saw the video when he was running. He was trying to look like a man's man instead of a jazz hands guy that he was, he was, just looking very effeminate when he would walk out to the crowds and everything else at their rallies. And he was trying to enhance his I'm a man cred, and went out and tried to load a gun and get some shots off in front of a camera and had no earthly idea how to load it, how to close the rifle or anything else. So, to have guys like this telling us what guns, do and don't do. In fact, and I'm going to share this again now. This is the other clip for you, John. Tim Walz actually knows even less about guns than he intimated in the first comment. Listen.
We had time. We should have been doing this, but this is a run out the clock. This is the oldest strategy in the world. Oh, I don't know. I can't. I don't know if we can define what an assault weapon is. I don't know. Do you really think limiting them to less than 100 bullets is going to do anything? Yes. Yes, it is. Yes, it is going to save lives. Just like the extreme risk protection orders, which I can pull quotes from many of these folks who said, this will do nothing. This will not protect lives. This will take away our freedoms. It's time to start reporting that that is all bullshit. It does do something. It does make a difference. And to stand here and have to look in the eyes of parents who lost their little ones, shame on them. And shame on us if we don't get this done.
Okay, John, I've got my own thoughts here, but I don't want to steal your thunder. Your response to what you just heard from Tim Walz.
Well, I mean, it's an empirical question whether or not these laws produce the benefits that he claims. You look at something like these red flag laws, these extreme risk protection orders. I mean, first of all, people need to understand we already have a law on the books in all the states called civil protection. And what happens in those cases, if you worry that somebody's a danger to themselves or others, the police will come out. If the police think that there's what's called a reasonable probability, which is like a 20% chance that the person is in fact a danger to themselves or others, they will take the person in for a psychiatric evaluation. If the psychiatric experts believe that there is a reasonable probability that the person is a danger to themselves or others, there can be an immediate court hearing. If you don't have the money for a lawyer, one will be provided for you. And then the judge, if the judge decides, and it varies by state, what the level of proof that he needs to have, what will happen is the judge has a range of options. He can either go and say, okay, look, if you voluntarily go and see a mental health care professional, we'll come back in a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever and reevaluate the situation. If more is needed, he's worried that somebody's going to drive a car through a crowd of people. He can take away your driver's license or your vehicle. If he thinks a gun may be used, he can take away your gun. But in the most extreme case, he can involuntarily commit the person. The thing with these red flag laws is the only option that a judge has is to take away a person's gun. And what happens is somebody makes a written complaint.
Without due process, right? Without due process.
All the judge sees is the written complaint, doesn't even talk to the person who made the complaint, doesn't talk to the person who the complaint is being made against. There's no hearing. And based simply on that written complaint, he'll take away the person's guns. The problem is if you really believe that somebody is a danger to themselves or others, simply taking away their guns is not a serious solution. If you really believe, the vast majority of these times, the person is suicidal. Simply taking away a person's guns when there's so many different ways that somebody can go and commit suicide is simply not a serious solution to this. And so, it's just,
the obvious, if I may, John, to interrupt for a second, because you're bringing a lot of great points up and great information, but just responding to Tim Walz, again, what is their answer to when somebody, like just happened in Australia, when somebody has a gun that they have acquired legally or illegally, decides to open fire, and there is no one left to fire back? And I hate to be simplistic about it, about the old phrase about police and where they are and when they need to be there. When seconds matter, police are minutes away, and sometimes many, many, many minutes. And people aren't able to defend themselves. There's a reason he said, well, why would anybody need 100 bullets? If you give them less than that, then it'll save lives. Well, you know what? If you give them as many bullets as they need to neutralize the threat for them and their family, especially what if there's more than just 2 shooters on a beach? What if there's 10 shooters on the beach and they all have a lot of rounds? Why do they think that limiting the right of the people trying to defend themselves is the answer to gun violence?
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, the problem that you create is you go and create these gun-free zones, whether it be at the Brown University or be at the Minneapolis Catholic school where the shooting occurred a little while ago, or in Australia. You create these gun-free zones, and you end up making it so that the law-abiding citizens obey these rules, but not the criminals, and actually create magnets for these attacks. So at the Minneapolis school in Minnesota, where he's at, if somebody carried a handgun onto school property there, that's punishable by 5 years in prison. For you or I, that's a huge penalty. Okay, our lives would be completely changed being a felon, having to spend 5 years in prison. But let's say you're the murderer in that case who murdered two people, and you end up violating this gun-free school zone act that's there. You're already you've wounded 17 people, you've murdered two people. How many life sentences effectively are you going to be spending in prison? What is it, 5, 6, 7? Who knows? But is the notion that taking 5 years away from maybe your 8th life going to go and stop you from committing these crimes? It's just simply not serious. Effectively, that's no penalty that you're imposing on them. So what you've done is you've set up a penalty system so that law-abiding citizens will obey it because you're imposing a huge penalty on them. But the guy who's committing the crime, it imposes no real penalty on him. And so you've set up a system so that the murderer is going to be sure that he's going to be the only person that's going to have a gun there. And so, you've actually accomplished kind of the opposite of what I thought you wanted to try to accomplish with those laws. But, in Australia, whether it's 11 minutes or 13 minutes, it's not clear to me how long it took before law enforcement arrived. There's also claims that the law enforcement didn't immediately engage the person when he did the attack, when they were doing the attacks. But you have a situation where you end up having it so that a lot of damage can be done in that time. Even if it was 6 minutes, you would have had a lot of damage that could be done. And so you got it. If you're going to stop these attacks, you have to go and take away what they think they're benefiting from it. And what these guys do overwhelmingly is they're committing these attacks in order to get media attention. And they know the more people they kill, the more media attention that they're going to be able to go and get. Often they're suicidal. But how do you take away that gain? Well, you convince them that somebody will be there quickly in order to go and stop the attack. We have like about
which isn't always going to be police, which is
exactly. Yeah.
John, I don't want to interrupt, but I've only got about 5 left with you here, and I want to get your reaction to one more subject, one more story here, because you do more than just research on gun violence and shootings and so on and so forth and crime rates. You also break things down by race as a part of your researching background. So this is Jasmine Crockett. She's a member of Congress, as we all know. She is pretty much batshit crazy, I think, as we all know, and she wants to be a senator who is batshit crazy. And as evidence of said craziness, let me offer this.
I mean, this is very simple. We right now have a white supremacist that is sitting in the White House. He is backed up by other white supremacists. And if you really want to know who the criminals are in this country, you can Google it. You don't have to trust me. But the people that commit 80% of the most violent crimes in this country are white supremacists. Yet for whatever reason, they sit and they serve at the pleasure of the president. They are the ones that were there on January 6th, tearing our democracy down physically. And now we have them tearing us down right here from within.
So this clip resurfaced because obviously she is running for Senate now. John, I'll give you all 5 minutes to respond to the claim that based on all of your research, that 80% of violent crime in America is committed by white people, not just white people, but by white supremacists specifically.
Right. Well, I don't know what she means by the most serious violent crimes. If you look at murder, over half the murders in the United States are by blacks. Obviously, they make about 13% of the population, but make up over half of the murders. And by the way, just as an aside, blacks are killing other blacks. About 90% of black murderers are by other blacks. If you look at something like mass public shootings, over half of those are by whites. It's about 56% or so. But that's less than their share of the population. So they're actually underrepresented. Blacks are overrepresented relative to their share. Muslims are way overrepresented relative to their share. Trans individuals are like 7 times more than their share of the population, overrepresented. So, I, as I say, I don't know what she means by the most serious violent crimes. But if you wanted to define it in terms of murder,
how would you define a serious violent crime versus a non-serious one? I would think that all violent crimes are serious. Now, does she mean those with mass casualties? A fire being set, a bomb being exploded, or is that what? I don't know either. But what I do know is that all violent crime is serious, and she's saying that 80% of it is committed by white people, and specifically white supremacists. And as you're pointing out, the representation of minority groups, and not just racial minority groups, but as you point out with the trans situation, white violent crime is significantly underrepresented in terms of the total picture.
Yeah, I mean, either murders or mass murders or whatever, or look, even if you want to take violent crime as a whole, murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assaults, the Bureau of Justice Statistics has gone out, and you find that both blacks in particular are overwhelmingly overrepresented in terms of that. Whites are underrepresented as a percentage. Asians are way underrepresented in terms of that. So I don't, whether you want to have all violent crime or murder or mass shootings or whatever, it's not and then she's dealing with this tiny group of white supremacists within whites.
Right.
The thing is, if you look at mass public shootings, for example, what you find is that over 70%, you cannot find any political views on their part at all. These are individuals who are just suicidal, who feel underrepresented, and do it for the reasons we were just talking about a minute ago. If you break it down further, you may find about 8% or 7% who you could classify as white supremacists to some extent, which is a lot different than 80. But even then, I don't think people understand what's going on there, because what you find is that most of those are kind of like environmentalists. They're people that go and hate minorities because they're upset about people having kids, and they think minorities are having too many kids, more than their share of kids, and that having kids damages the environment. And so you have people like the Buffalo mass murderer at the grocery store there, who went and tried to kill blacks. Remember, I think he shot like 10 to death. He basically described himself as an eco-terrorist type, socialist type, somebody who was an environmentalist extremist, and or the San Antonio Walmart shooter had exactly the same types of views. There was others that we could point to too that are similar. So it's just, it's you know, but unfortunately, you know, the New York Times or whatever may have had like 8 editorials on the Buffalo mass murder, and basically wants to classify him as a right winger, and some of these others as right wingers, because anybody who is a racist, they automatically assume or claim that the person is a right winger, even though in his manifesto or in their diaries make it extremely clear what their political views are.
Well, plus just history tells us, just typically speaking, it's, you know, it's the Democrat Party, aka the left, that has been notoriously been the party of racism and the party of identity politics as well. And but yeah, it's a political agenda that they have to advance, and that is to try to paint white people, especially anybody who is white who commits a violent act, as being a right winger, regardless of what the facts say. John,
well, at
I
least
know
I'll be able to write a lot of op-eds about her if she gets the nomination for the Democrat.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some other people, because I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the demographics of Texas are, but when you're an African-American member of Congress and you won your little district, which is probably predominantly African-American, fine.
Right.
You want to win the whole state of Texas. Again, I don't know what the demographics are, but it's probably majority white. Maybe, I don't know, but you're basically telling all of them that, you know, I don't like you, and I think
Well, a lot
you're
of
all
Hispanics
violent. How do you
classify
win?
themselves as whites. So,
Okay. Yeah, that's a great point too. So I can't imagine her ever rising to the United States Senate. God forbid she does, but she's going to have a lot of questions to answer about these kinds of things if she does. John, you don't deal with the nonsense. You deal with facts. That's what the research is all about. You are an extraordinary researcher as well as an author. I'll remind people again to go to your website, crimeresearch.org, as well as to read your books, More Guns, Less Crime, and so much more. This article today on the Australian shooting and the truth about the confiscation there and what it has led to is available at the Federalist website, thefederalist.com, and we'll try to steer people there as well. John, thanks for making the time today. Keep up the phenomenal work. I love the fact that you continue to drop new research about every week, maybe sometimes more than one article a week, but it's really appreciated, and all the best, my friend.
well, thank you for being there, Bob. You make a difference. I appreciate it.
Thank you, John. All right, that's John Arlott Jr. John, again, is the president and founder of the Crime Prevention Research Center. Love that guy. He is phenomenal. What I want to do now, although I got to make sure that he is ready to go. I see that he is logged in, but I'm looking for the face of the handsome, debonair civil rights commissioner, the longest serving civil rights commissioner in the history of said commission in Washington, D.C., Peter Kirsanow. Peter, are you ready to go, my friend? I see a PK, but I don't see.
Can you hear me?
I hear you. I just don't see you.
For some reason, I'm hitting enable camera and it's not coming on.
I wish I was tech savvy enough to tell you why. Or
it says also unable to access camera. Let me try something else.
I know. I love your title. I see you've got your title on there. Emperor of North America. Is that what we're going with here?
Yeah, that was just recently acquired. But you know, until such time as I can figure out what the technical difficulty is here, and I'm baffled as to why, other than I'm a technological Luddite, but I've hit enable camera on both of the applications and it's not registering.
Okay. Well, not is the lens cap on?
No, it's not. I've used. In fact, I used this. The last time I used this was last night, and it was working pretty well.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, sometimes they're just glitchy. Believe me, my first broadcast doing this on Rumble on Monday was filled with all kinds of tech glitches. I'm going to have more every day until this becomes something of secondhand to me and second nature. But yeah, it happens. It's no big deal. We can hear you. And most of the people who have been listening to you for the last 11 years only hear you anyway, as you've been on with me every single week on terrestrial radio. I know they would love to see you today, but they're used to listening to you. So we can do that. If you get it fixed, let me know and we'll pop you up and put your picture on there and let people gaze wantonly at your at your handsome visage. All right. So Pete, first of all, thanks. Welcome. What do you think of the new digs?
This is great. I'm impressed. I like the background. I think this is a great evolution in your communication to the people of the United States. This is phenomenal. I love it.
I feel the same way. It's going to be something that hopefully grows, bigger and bigger as time goes on. I think I've tripled the number of subscribers after 2 shows. I think we had around 300 when we started. There's around 900 now. Followers, I should say, on the chat, or excuse me, on the Rumble. Let me pull it up real quick. And just want to kind of double check where we are. Let's refresh that. Yeah, just under 900 actually. And that's good. And if we triple every 2 days, that would make things even much better, because we do want to expand our reach. We have a lot of things that we want to share with the folks. So Pete, thanks for coming in and continuing to educate us. We got a lot of things we're going to talk about today, and I want to start, if it's okay with you. Why the hell can they not find a shooter at Brown University? This guy walks into a classroom, and apparently it's in a part of the building we heard from the latest absolutely meandering, nonsensible press conference. They're saying, well, there's really good state-of-the-art cameras in part of the building, and there's little to no cameras in the older part of the building. And this kid knew where to go, what older part of the building to go, apparently, to walk in, shoot up a whole bunch of people, and then disappear into the ether. They have no idea. The press conference yesterday, Pete, do I have that? Let me see if I can share this with you in short order, because this was wild. The press is calling out the authorities to their faces. Let me see if I can bring this up, and then I'll get you to react to this, because how, again, can a university with the type of endowment, I think they've got a $10 million endowment or something like that. And looks like for some reason my camera just went haywire. Okay. My apologies. Yeah, my camera just powered off for some strange
Clearly,
reason.
this is a conspiracy.
It's gotta be. It's gotta be. All right. I'm gonna have to work. I'm gonna have to work on that. Let me see if I can just, I don't know if refreshing the screen will completely butcher the entire broadcast. Let me do this. Let me play the clip, and we're going to do radio for a second here, Peter, and then I'll get you to respond to it. And as you do that, I'll fix the camera situation. But yeah, the camera just shut down for some strange reason. But Pete, this is the press conference yesterday as the press is getting fed up in Providence, because they're saying there's an armed and dangerous killer on the loose, and they don't have a clue why or who he is, because there were no cameras in the building at a wealthy, elite Ivy League university. Listen.
God bless it. What the hell happened?
To help get us there. There would be no reason for us to hold it back. We're looking for the best image we can.
Dan, got a follow-up. Attorney General, thank you for explaining that, because it really clarifies it. Although I'm sure some people watching would think a multi-million-dollar school with a huge endowment could afford new cameras in an old building. That's my statement. Here's my question.
That's the message right there. Okay, Peter, hopefully you were able to hear that as well. We finally got the picture back up on the screen, although our camera is still not working here. But Peter, give me what your thoughts are with respect to the fact that this, multi-million-dollar university with this huge billions of dollars endowment cannot put up security cameras to make sure that parents who send their kids to Brown are actually under some sort of safe surveillance.
Yeah, I think this is a travesty. There is evidence out there that this was a targeted attack, perhaps for political reasons. And if you are, look, I went to an Ivy League school, sent my daughter to an Ivy League school. Those are extraordinarily expensive. And you think that parents and alums would think that this is something that would be, first of all, prevented because you'd have adequate security. But number two is that within an instant of the incident occurring, you'd have some type of, if not a resolution, the ability of the authorities to make very, very good progress in capturing the suspect. It's an outrage that it happened in the first place, and it's an equal outrage that this is something, again, as you just indicated, many of us here have been on college campuses, and especially the elite college campuses. Bob, I'm not sure if I'm still on.
You are. I can hear you just fine. Yep.
All right, because I've got a blank screen here, so you're just gonna have to.
No, you're doing fine. This is just radio for us. It's fine. Yeah. We can't see.
I may be disoriented. We'll work out the glitches for the next program, but nonetheless, you expect that there's going to be a college campus, especially in the Ivy League, is considered to be a protected environment. You send your kid there after you spend. Look. Some of these folks are spending up to $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year, to all told, to go there. And this is what you get. Now, things happen. That's true. Things happen. But there were a lot of failures here on multiple levels, and they're going to have to account for them.
Yeah, there's no question. And there's a very uneasy public there. And what's worse about this is that apparently they had said they had a person of interest that they were following, and that led to almost everybody standing down, saying, okay, they've got their person now they just got to locate them and corral them because they know who they're looking for. Then come to find out, yeah, we didn't have that right person. And according to those who are familiar with investigations, FBI and otherwise, that meant they had to restart almost from scratch because they shut everything down, because they felt like, okay, we've got this guy. So other leads were essentially ignored and so forth. And when they had to start over again, now this guy essentially had almost a 2-day head start. And now 4 days in, they're resorting to, hey, we can't find them. If anybody else sees them, let us know. And the one thing that looked and sounded awful too, and I don't know if it was the chief of police or if it was the mayor who actually said, look, we're tired, okay? We've been going at this for 49 hours. We're tired. Give us a little bit of a break here. It just sounds like it's the most disorganized attempt at an investigation to find a killer that I've seen, I don't know, maybe ever.
Well, it may be. I'm loath to jump on law enforcement, and they have a hard job to do. And but I'm more concerned about the deterrent aspect, the preventative aspect. And it was significant to me that this was something where, again, by the accounts I've read, it appeared to be targeted. They had surveillance video of this individual meandering through the campus. And again, you can't prevent everything, but it does seem as if they're not on top of things. And it bodes ill for other college campuses. Again, Brown is extraordinarily prestigious and wealthy. I have a bone to pick for them because I suffered concussion against them in football back in the day. But nonetheless, it's extraordinary that this happened.
Yeah, there's no question about it. It's a very, very disturbing look. We like to think that our law enforcement partners always know what they're doing, whether it be local or federal. And in this case, they're kind of supposed to be coordinating and combining their efforts. We like to think that they know what they're doing. Sometimes they just don't. And sometimes, very rarely, I think, you see something like this where it looks like chaos is the order of the day as opposed to order being the order of the day. So, and then one other quick thing on this, Pete, before we move on, there's a couple of other things, obviously, for us to talk about, actually several. I was just talking to John Arlott Jr. about this and about the gun control thing. What do you make of the fact that the instantaneous response, again, is not whether or not the shooter yelled something, and let's get to motivation and so forth. It's about the weapon of choice. Had he gone in there and stabbed a bunch, you notice there was nobody after the stabbing of Irina Zarutska on that light rail train in North Carolina. Nobody was calling for knife control. Whenever you see these types of horrific crimes being committed with anything other than guns, it's okay. Now we'll talk about the person and the motive and so forth. But when it's guns, it's like the rest of it is irrelevant to them. They just, like Tim Walz is screaming, "Ban guns! We got to do this. I'm tired of this BS." What do you make of that?
There's a lot to unpack there, Bob. The fact of the matter is that we have a Second Amendment for a reason. I'm glad we do, because right now is in bad shape with all these terrorist attacks that they're experiencing, the Christmas markets, etc. Not to say that we're immune from that, but we have a Second Amendment. It's the Second Amendment. That's how important it is. And for a variety of reasons, we could talk about the historical reason for it, but we want to have our own ability. What's the old line when seconds count, the police are 10 minutes away?
Well, when seconds count, the police are minutes away. Whatever it is, whether it's 2 minutes and seconds count, people are dying. Whether it's 2 minutes or 10 minutes or 30 minutes. Yeah.
What you don't see, and I know you had John Lott on, who's one of my favorite witnesses at the Civil Rights Commission. He's appeared before us a number of times, and you won't find, I don't think that in my nearly quarter of a century on the commission, there's been somebody who's caused the left to go more apoplectic, and they attack him mercilessly. Why? Because he's on top of the target every single time. When you look at the stats in terms of crimes prevented and or deterred by the presence of handguns or rifles, and you look at what's happening in Europe right now, maybe that's a little bit of an extreme, but not what we're seeing so far domestically. You look at some of the threat data, it's extraordinary. So, but the left has this almost knee-jerk reaction to whenever there's a crime. Forget the fact that we've got all kinds of reasons or things that generate those types of crime incidences. We can talk about that forever and ever, amen. But they constantly just look at confiscating guns. You look at the countries with the greatest gun control out there, and if you control for demographics, they're in bad shape. They're in worse shape than the United States is in terms of crimes committed and fail to be deterred. So this is a serious issue, and we're not giving up the Second Amendment.
All right, Peter, we are still working on the camera issue on our end, and I know you are as well. It has been suggested to me that we just want to go ahead and refresh here. We may have a short interruption. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on a second. I see myself again. Okay, the camera's back on. Gremlin's doing whatever they do. I don't know, but it has repaired itself apparently. So we're going to roll on as is. I don't know exactly why yours isn't working, but mine is on now. So we're going to keep going with that. And again, I apologize to the audience. These are things that whatever we have never had to worry about before, but now we have video to deal with. And when things go haywire, sometimes they go haywire. All right, things are going haywire, obviously, at Brown University. Pete, I want to move on, and I want to talk about tonight. Tonight, your favorite president, as he keeps reminding you, is going to be addressing the nation. And he's going to be addressing the nation from the Oval Office, and he is going to tout the 11 months of successes of the Trump administration. Some may wonder why he's doing this right now. Maybe it's just a year-end, getting close to the end of the year review. Or maybe the economic numbers are starting to be a little bit worrisome to him and to the hopes for, keeping the majority next year in the midterms. Yesterday, found out the unemployment rate went from 4.4 to 4.6. Only about 64,000 jobs were added. And so there is still the ongoing mainstream news narrative of affordability crisis and housing and in certain, groceries, things like coffee and beef and on down the line. So, and then of course we're engaged in some, I won't call it warfare, but we're engaged in some pretty high stakes tension type things happening by blowing up narco boats, now enacting a blockade around Venezuela, not allowing any tankers to go near Venezuela, and so forth. So, and then of course we have the ongoing ICE issues. So what do you expect to hear from the president tonight about those issues, or do you think it'll be more broad?
Well, I think he's going to address them specifically because we know Donald Trump, he doesn't engage in this kind of esoteric explanation of what's going on. He engages in specifics. I think he's going to talk about inflation and gas prices in Venezuela and the various wars that are going on. Many of the wars that he has, frankly, helped to bring to an end. And also with respect to manufacturing. There's a lot of good news out there. And if we had a media that wasn't so horrifically biased, you'd hear more about it. It'd be placed in, I think, more realistic context. It'd be placed in, if it was placed in a context that they respect to Joe Biden, Donald Trump would go down as the greatest president in history. But he has accomplished a lot. Now, gas prices, let's just take a look at gas prices. A year ago today, we were paying more than twice as much, or about twice as much as we are right now. It's really stark when you look at the gas pump, what the prices are right now. He has been involved in the cessation of several wars. Maybe those things aren't going to be permanent, but at least a huge amount has been brought as a result of his efforts. Inflation, we're going to have to deal with that. You look at it went from 9-point-something% under Biden, and the media obviously very convenient forgets that, and frankly didn't really report about it very robustly at the time it was occurring. Now inflation has gone down significantly. All of these things are pending items. None of these things have been solved, and they're not going to be solved. But the old phrase that Reagan used, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago, or whatever amount of period you want to talk about?
11 months.
I think that the if you talk about 9 months, the case can clearly be made that we're better off overall than we were 9 months ago. I think the standing of the United States in the world, among other things, not just what we're experiencing domestically in terms of the economy, but the standing of the world of the United States in the world has been improved immeasurably. We were on the verge of being considered a joke with Joe Biden at the helm. I know the mainstream media hates that, and the Democratic Party, of course, will recoil at that, but an objective measure of the available indices as to what a president can affect, if you take a look at what Joe Biden was up to and what Trump has accomplished, it's night and day.
Yeah, well, you have to convince the people of that, though, because according to the polling, they're not happy. They're not happy. And now, again, can they be influenced? Of course, that they can. It's a rhetorical question by what the media tells them. If the media tells them they're suffering, then they're going to say, yeah, man, why are we suffering? And so they have to do something to shift the tide and turn the attention of the public away from all of the things that the media tells them are going poorly, and look at what has been accomplished in the last 11 months compared to the previous 4 years of misery. And that's what tonight is about. But what is coming is even bigger. And I want to share this with you now, Pete. This is Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary. And Scott Bessent says we're gonna do something next year for taxpayers that is going to be a game changer. Let's watch and listen to the Treasury Secretary.
Maria, let's go back. The One Big Beautiful Bill was passed on July 4th, but for working Americans, it was retroactive to the beginning of the year. Most taxpayers did not change their withholding, so as a result, we're going to see very substantial 100 to 150 billion of refunds in the first quarter go directly to Americans' pockets. So the sooner they file, the sooner they'll get them. Our estimate is it could be 1,000, 2,000 per household, depending on the number of workers.
Wow, that is a big deal. So, Secretary, you've talked about this additional money from the tax code that we're getting. You talked about the impact of the Big Beautiful Bill. It sounds like you think we're going to get a real economic boost for the macro story in the first or second quarter. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I think it's going to... They start lifting off in the first quarter and the second quarter. And Maria, the other thing, when I started my career on Wall Street in the 80s, people used to focus on trade. Were we building more in the U.S. or were we importing more? We're seeing the trade deficit drop too. So the trade deficit drop means more production in the U.S. So I think that's something that economists are going to have to start looking again, thanks to President Trump after 40 years.
Well, you're proposing a major shift now in how the government approaches financial stability.
Okay. So, Peter, want to ask you about what you just saw. Well, hopefully you saw it. I know we can't see you, but hopefully you saw that. Scott Besson, and what it said on the screen was Americans are going to get $1,000 to $2,000 tax refunds, everybody, early next year in the midterm year. The left is probably going to paint this as buying votes. So is this just a byproduct of the One Big Beautiful Bill and the historic tax cuts under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that has now been made permanent because of the passage of that bill? What is your take on that tax refunds for everybody?
Well, I think it's going to be an economic boost, not just for individual taxpayers, but for the economy in general, because typically when you get that type of found money, so to speak, money that you hadn't expected at least, the tendency on the part of most people historically is to purchase things, not to save it, but to purchase things. That should cause an economic boost and I think that's going to be a welcome advantage. Yeah, will it, I think, make people happier about their situation in life and happier about the Trump administration? Probably on the margins. It doesn't hurt. And I think that the media trying to downplay it is not going to work because they can't say you don't have that money in your pocket. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing, generally speaking, that taxpayers get money returned to them. So I'm glad about this, and it's important. It's imperative that Donald Trump, who many people have said is his best spokesperson, but also the members of administration get out there as they've been doing. They've been more vigorous in doing this than in past Republican administrations, including the first Trump administration. It's important for the reasons that we've talked about on numerous times, Bob, and that is the mainstream media will either ignore good news when it comes to a Republican, especially Donald Trump, or they will amplify anything that they can consider to be negative or neutral news and make it seem as if it's all Trump's fault. One of the reasons why I think Republicans, and especially Trump, have problems with approval ratings is because they never get a shake from the media, never. And again, kind of baffled, maybe you weren't, but when Susie Wiles went out and started talking to Vanity Fair, I get that you have to talk to the media. But I think that going into, and I think sometimes you do have to go into hostile environments, but all of the press, with the possible exception of Fox News, is a hostile environment to this administration. That's putting it mildly. So I don't know that you necessarily have to feed that beast if you can find alternate means, and they are plentiful now in the age of the internet, by which you can get your message across to people without going to ABC, CBS, and all the others that are going to either ignore good news or downplay it or even completely distort and lie about it. And that is not an exaggeration. They do. They lie about it, and we see it constantly.
Peter Kirstenau is with us here on Strictly Speaking Unfiltered. We've had a real big tech glitch this last hour, or excuse me, in the second hour of this broadcast. For whatever reason, our camera went out here in the studio. Pete's camera is still not working on his end. So at least half of that is back. I'm also told that you weren't able to hear most of the clip that I was playing earlier. I'm getting messages all over the place from people trying to help us work through the tech problem. So I do apologize for that. But hopefully people are able to see and hear everything now, with the exception of Pete, as I want to share this clip as well. Peter, this is a little bit of a follow-up on what we just heard from Scott Besson in terms of affordability and in terms of economy, and the polling that shows President Trump is sinking big time when it comes to the economy, and people's confidence level about 2026 and being able to afford all of their daily needs. So here's Vice President J.D. Vance on the subject of affordability. And then I'm going to hit the Susie Wiles interview you mentioned. Pete, listen to this.
Time to fix things, but the political reality is that the midterms are next year. Are you worried that affordability is a political liability for your administration and for Republicans?
Look, I'm not worried about the politics because I believe fundamentally in the wisdom of the American people. When we go out there and we tell our story that gasoline and energy got way too high under Joe Biden's administration, but we've lowered the cost of energy, the American people will understand that. The American people know that. When we go out there and talk about the fact that the affordability crisis that happened under Joe Biden's administration made a lot of Americans poorer and working every single day to put money back in their pocket, I think the American people will understand and agree with that. Of course, they're going to be the ones who make the final decision. But I feel very confident that if we keep wages high, we keep energy prices low, we keep on chipping away at the affordability crisis created by Joe Biden's administration, yes, I believe the American people are going to reward us because the American people are smart. They know Rome wasn't built in a day. They know what Joe Biden broke is not going to get fixed in a week. We got to stay with it. We got to keep on working on bringing good jobs and money back into the United States of America. And that it already has paid major dividends for the American people. It's going to pay a lot more in the year to come. Thank you.
All right, so that's Vice President J.D. Vance. Peter, are the American people going to buy, quote, Rome wasn't built in a day, as their angst about the economy continues to be ratcheted up largely by the media? Will they accept, hey, just give us more time?
No, they won't. I mean, you're always going to get a grace period when you have an incoming administration. And the grace period can last anywhere from 9 months to a year. But after a while, you own the economy, you own the environment, and it's futile to continue blaming others because people have moved on. Most people are not politically engaged. They don't care whose fault it was. All they know is right now we're not feeling it. So you better do something about it. That's why you were elected. Nonetheless, I think it's imperative for Republicans especially to get their message out on a regular basis because the so-called good news is, as we've just discussed a minute ago, is not going to be reported or distorted by Democrats or the media, and I repeat myself. So I think the president has very good spokespersons, none better than himself. But J.D. Vance, the Rubios, if I were the administration, I think they're doing this, but I would do it even more, is I would send people out. It would be J.D. Vance's full-time job, 24/7, go out and make the case. And that's for not just from a political perspective, because very often the psychology of the economy is what drives some of an improvement in the economy. People need to feel good about themselves in their own particular economic situation before they start spending money, engaging in the economy, and propelling the stock market forward. And it's not just the stock market, but the economy generally. So I do think that there's going to be a law of diminishing returns right now. I think that at some point, people are going to say, you've been saying all these things, but I don't feel it. Nonetheless, I do think, and I'm kind of contradicting myself in a way, I do think that a lot of people have understood that things are getting better and it takes a little bit of time to get it done. So I think they're on the right track. Just make sure that you counter the media at every turn.
That's why we're here. That's the reason we continue to do this, and we've moved over to this show now and hopefully going to grow it and reach a lot more people to do exactly that, to counter the media narrative, to calm the waters. Don't let them get people all riled up and thinking the sky is falling when they're not. And here's the real thing. The real difficulty, Peter, is looking at the overall inflation metrics and trying to bring that into people's kitchens. And what I mean is, and we talked about this, I think the last time we spoke on terrestrial radio, corporate radio, was the fact that the average inflation in Trump's first 4 years was 1.9%. That's the average of inflation. The average inflation of Biden for 4 years was 5%, 1.9 to 5%, peaking, as we know, in 2021. It looks like the camera quit again. Boy, oh boy. Yeah, we've got issues. I'm going to have a little talk with the folks at Rumble and Restream and whatever else. So I apologize. But anyway, Peter, I'm just going to throw a placeholder up here. The 9% peak in 2021 was a part of the 5% average. Well, here we are. It's only been a year, 11 months, and it's already down from the average of 5% under Biden to 2.7% under Trump. Now, is that as good as 1.9 or 2? No. But again, 11 months in, it's appreciably better. Again, that's a larger, just average metric. Why isn't that being felt or noticed or whatever as people look at their grocery receipts and look at their bills and so on and so forth overall?
Yeah, I think Scott Bessent is correct, and some other economists are correct, that there's always going to be a lag time between what the economic data show and how people are feeling that. Simply because the economy or the stock market goes up to a certain level, or other economic indices indicate that things are improving and improving dramatically, it takes a while before the public perception catches up to that. What that lag time is, I can't recall. Some people have said that lag time is as much as 9 months, but things objectively are getting substantially better. And as I said before, I look at economic data. I don't understand it the way Scott Bessent would, of course. But the thing that affects me, aside from the time I spend online looking at economic data, looking at all the reports that are coming out from either the Department of Labor or elsewhere, is when I go to the gas pump. That is something that is real. It's something almost tangible. I can feel it. But looking at that meter there and seeing how much farther or further the prices have come down from the Biden administration peaks and other things like that, that you can actually sense, touch, feel, those things will have an effect. And I think things are going in the right direction. But having said that, the Democrats and the media, but I repeat myself, clearly understand that, and as did almost every totalitarian organization in the history of the world, that propaganda can be effective. And as long as they continue to suppress the voices, by suppress, I don't mean that there's any physical suppression, of course. I mean, simply don't report things, such as, maybe J.D. Vance, doesn't get the type of widespread coverage it would if Kamala Harris was saying something in support of the Biden administration. But as long as there is the ability of the Democrats and the media to paint a counter narrative, it's imperative, it's incumbent on almost every administration who can speak effectively. And they should be having team meetings, and maybe they do, saying, here's the message of the day or the message of the week, and getting it straight and hewing strictly to those talking points. Because as you see in some of the most recent media reports, they have, when they are reporting about things the Trump administration is doing, they're distorting it horribly. It's truly an amazing thing to watch. Yes, we are conservatives and Republicans, so we have our own lens or filter or bias, but being as objective as possible, you look at this and you're going, what is the media? We know what the media is doing. I mean, they do this all the time, but when it comes to Trump, there is a Trump derangement syndrome that I think propels their coverage in a way that is even more biased than it would be under any other Republican president.
I want to talk about Susie Wiles and that Vanity Fair thing, Peter, but since you brought up Trump derangement syndrome, I'm reminded, of course, of the Rob Reiner thing. What was your take on President Trump's response to Reiner? We all know who, Rob Reiner was in his life. He was almost as bad as Robert De Niro and Rosie O'Donnell and others in terms of his just complete hatred for Donald Trump and saying the most horrific things ever. And no doubt that's all President Trump could think of whenever he found out Rob Reiner was killed. So he wrote a message saying, Rob Reiner and his wife died, and he kind of intimated that it was largely because of his TDS that made other people crazy. It just rubbed a lot of people, myself included, the wrong way because, his drug addicted 17 times in rehab son is the one who killed them. And apparently there was a big fight prior to this over him going back into rehab. It had nothing to do with TDS, but Trump got hit from the right and from the left for his response to Reiner. Any thoughts on that, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't like his response. I'll be very honest about it, and I bet you most people don't. And you stated very well the reasons why he would respond that way, or almost any would at least feel compelled to respond and get it off his chest because he was the subject of so much derision. But nonetheless, a human being or a couple of human beings died. They were killed. That's important, regardless of politics. Something of that nature transcends politics. And I think, again, all due respect to President Trump on this, it was an own goal. He didn't need to do that. And I think it was, I would have exercised a little bit more discretion, regardless of how he feels about it. Even your enemies deserve a little bit of respite or respect when something horrible befalls them. So better to remain silent than to open your mouth on something like that.
I agree. And I don't want to make it, I am no less supportive of my president because of this. I can be 100% supportive of policies, mission, direction, dedication, but not to agree with every word that comes out of somebody's mouth, no matter who that person is. And these are just words.
and giving, Trump the, a little bit of benefit of the doubt. I mean, here's a guy who's been the subject of a couple of assassination attempts. They've tried to impeach him a couple of times. They've investigated him to death more than any president in the history of the world. So yeah, you can understand why he has he has a certain emotional or visceral reaction, but it's also incumbent upon someone who is the most powerful man in the world to exercise maybe a little bit more discretion, especially, he could always say something a month from now or even a week from now, but close on the heels of a tragedy like this, that's, to put it mildly, it's not a good look.
No, it's not. And Pete, it wasn't a good look in Vanity Fair either, the Susie Wiles interview and the way they portrayed it. I want to talk about that, but I'm going to go ahead and try to do a hard refresh here. I'm told this could take a good 5 seconds of blackness, which may be the case. It also could end the live stream altogether. So here's what I'm going to do, Pete. I mean, I literally don't know. This is only our third day doing this, and I've not had an issue like this before where your camera doesn't work at all on your end, and mine quit in the middle of the broadcast for some strange reason. So I'm going to follow the advice of some experienced people who are messaging me and saying, do a hard refresh. It could take 5 to 10 seconds here. If we come back, you'll know it, and we'll keep going. And if not, it'll be the end of today's broadcast or live stream, and we'll pick up the pieces and come back at it stronger tomorrow. But I'm going to do this now in 3, 2, 1. All right. Now the question is are we back?
I can hear you, Bob.
You can hear me? Okay. That's good. And I'm going to reload the camera here too to see if we can get back on screen as well. So let me see if we can make that happen, and whether or not that is the solution to the problem here. Let me drop the graphic. And all right, I think I am live now. Okay, yeah.
I can see you.
All right.
Still having problems accessing this. It's still, there's a line through it's a, one of those red lines that's going through the camera icon. So it indicates it's not working for whatever reason.
Yeah. And just pushing that button didn't bring it up, huh? Because
no.
Yeah, because that's what happened to mine when the camera quit. I got that same red line saying, no camera. I still don't know exactly why it was, but
we'll figure it out.
Yeah. I don't want to bore everybody with all that stuff. Okay, Peter, the Vanity Fair interview with and feature with Susie Wiles, who of course is President Trump's chief of staff. First of all, before we talk about the interview, Peter, do you remember when the campaign was going on last year and Kamala Harris and her team of misfits tried to claim that Trump was afraid of powerful women? He doesn't like having powerful women around him. And then he named Susie Wiles his chief of staff, for crying out loud. He names Pam Bondi his attorney general. I mean, he appoints and surrounds himself with powerful women in almost all ways. Susie Wiles is universally recognized as a wonderful, experienced, calm, steady hand. And I think that's why Trump picked her. And anybody who just reads that Vanity Fair article in which she, allegedly, without context, refers to President Trump as having an alcoholic's personality and refers to J.D. Vance as being some sort of conspiracy theorist, and with all kinds of other negative things about members of the cabinet. Just give me your first impression of the picture they're trying to paint of Susie Wiles and why you think they're trying to do that.
Well, we know why, because almost every mainstream has a bias against Trump, and that's putting it mildly. Susie Wiles is, by all reports, I don't know her, I don't think I've ever met her, but by all reports is, as you indicated, she's tough, she's savvy, she understands the media landscape extremely well. So for her to have sat for that interview indicates that she went in with a particular perspective, and she knew that she was going to be subject to certain types of questions that might, if not overly hostile, could nonetheless be woven into a narrative that was going to be negative to the administration. Oh, looks like something's happening here. I'm sorry for getting distracted, but maybe we're getting, no, I guess not. I thought that the screen was coming on.
Yeah,
But nonetheless,
I was actually trying to pull up your name since all I have is the black box. I got your name up there,
Yeah.
but I can provide. So go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, well, I think that whenever you go into there's only a couple of media outlets that will treat Republicans well or fairly. And fairly is what you're looking for. You don't care about anybody puffing you up. At least if you're a Republican, you shouldn't expect that. But almost everyone else, you should know that it's going to be hostile. And I've done not the kind of media that a Susie Wiles has, but because of the various positions I've held over the years, I've done a considerable amount of media interviews. And with one exception, and I'll give credit where credit's due, Sabrina Eaton of the Plain Dealer has always been very fair to me. But with other
They have
media,
fair people. They have fair people at the Cleveland Plain Dealer. I hadn't noticed
Bob,
that.
you and I have had discussions about this before, but she's been very fair to me. I have to say, she's been very, very fair. And she actually, she second or she double and triple checks her information. So I appreciate that. That's all we want. And I don't expect to have hagiography. All I want is neutral, balanced treatment. That's all. Okay. If I've got warts, tell the people about my warts, but don't distort things. And that's what's happening to Trump on steroids more than any other politician I've seen. And everyone in the Trump orbit, I'm sure, has been counseled on a regular basis if they have to be. And I don't think they do, because almost everybody on our side of the aisle, Bob, has seen this movie play a million times before. And we understand that unless we've got a stenographer there, we're going to get some type of manipulation of the story. And the media will say, no, that's not true. But all of us, everybody watching this right now or listening to this right now understands that. And I'll say that also in my experience over, I've been involved in matters that have been covered by the media for nearly 40 years. And on every single occasion, even when it's dealing with media sources that are ostensibly neutral, they get something wrong about it. Now, I'll give you one example, and maybe this is a little bit off kilter a little bit, but I was involved in labor negotiations for the city of Cleveland years and years, decades ago, and it was tense. The police and fire unions were going on strike at midnight. Okay, this was a big, big deal. And bottom line is, when we concluded the agreements, it was just before midnight, just before contracts were going to expire and the strike was going to occur. The union and I agreed that we were going to have a prepared statement outlining what the terms were, so there'd be no mistake and there'd be no spin whatsoever, and the media would get unvarnished precisely what both sides agreed were the agreement, the essential terms of the agreement. Nonetheless, we step outside, there's media all over the place, cameras are on, the lights, all of that stuff, and we read from the script, okay? And to the print reporters. Nonetheless, the next, I can't recall when the news report came out, but when we saw the news report on television and in the media, they got not just the details wrong, but just in many cases the opposite of what had actually occurred. And it was stunning to me. And again, maybe I was a babe in the woods way back when, but this happens on almost every occasion in which I've got inside information or I've been involved in the story. So that was from a non-political perspective, okay? They had no political reasons to shade the truth. Now you can imagine when it comes to politics, Republican politics, and especially with respect to Donald Trump, how almost everything we hear is distorted. Even when it comes from Fox News, it's going to have a slant. Maybe it's more conservative. Maybe it's more favorable than it should be. Who knows? But there's a bias in the media. It's undeniable. And I've never seen it like this in my entire time being involved in politics.
Some wonder why you said it a few minutes ago. Sometimes you have to go into the lion's den or something like that. They never do it, Gavin sat down with Hannity once or twice, I guess. Gavin Newsom, but he's of course a candidate. Or soon to be. But I mean, Biden would never come on Fox News or on, Newsmax or anything of that nature. He would never engage in that kind of conversation. And not just Biden, Barack Obama. I can't remember. It's been a bit now. Obama's been gone since, 2015. But I don't remember him being, willing, or members of the administration being willing to talk to reporters that might actually want to get a little bit more than just their polished talking points out there. So, I'm just wondering why Susie chose to sit with Vanity Fair, which it's not the Washington Post because it's not a newspaper, but it has as much of a reputation for being slanted as any of those, CNN, MSNBC, New York Times type publications do.
Yeah. Difficult to, I don't know. Other than she has confidence in her ability to communicate and make sure that she says things in a way that can't be wildly distorted. I have no idea. I know that, again, when you don't have options, sometimes you've got to appear in these venues. And, I don't criticize her for doing so. I think that the administration really doesn't have that many places it can go to get an unvarnished message out. So it's got to go to some places. Why she chose Vanity Fair, though, I don't know. It could be that she thought that, if the public hears from me without the media lens or filter, it will have a salutary effect on public perception of this administration. But I think that is an uphill battle. When you go into certain environments, there's no way you're going to get a fair outing. So that doesn't mean you just stick to Fox News or to the very few media outlets that could be fair or favorable to the Republican administration. But even if you're as savvy as Susie Wiles, you're going to know that, maybe she thought it wasn't going to be as bad as it would be. And, if you've got her type of credibility, maybe that was a good assessment. Don't know.
Right. Peter, I know you can't see it on the Rumble channel now because you don't do this, but there's a live chat going on, in which listeners can engage with me, with you, with each other, and so forth. And it's kind of the way phone calls are taken on talk radio. So we do the chat thing here. I want to read a couple of these and get your response. And anybody that's in the chat room right now, if you've got a direct question for Peter Kirsanow in these last 8 minutes we're going to be speaking, put it up there now and we'll ask him. I'll read it to him and get his answer. But Brian wrote, it would be massive incompetence if Susie Wiles didn't record the full interview herself. Louder versus Crocker's team recorded us interviewing Gerald at the 2024 RNC in Milwaukee. You've got to protect yourself. And that is something I know more and more conservatives are doing. And in fact, it might have been JD. No, not JD Vance. There was somebody in pretty high position who was asked to go sit down for an interview and would not do it unless they were allowed to bring their own recorder to make sure that, what happened with Trump and many other individuals doesn't happen, where they play things out of context and pretend that some of the other things that are said didn't exist.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I can't recall the name of the viewer who sent that in. But he should be commended for it. I do that on a regular basis when I have an opportunity. Sometimes my assistant sits on interviews, and these are not necessarily really politically charged, but because when you're on the Civil Rights Commission, almost every issue that you address is one that is a volatile issue. And I'm very used to, as I just indicated, to things being somewhat distorted. And the position that I take on these types of issues, civil rights issues that the left thinks they own, makes them apoplectic. I want to make sure that whatever I say is accurately recorded. That's extraordinarily good advice. I think most Republicans these days are aware of that, and they have an aide nearby or maybe a tape recorder on. A few months ago, 60 Minutes wanted to interview me. It didn't go forward, but I wanted to make sure I got in touch with my assistant immediately and said, look, 60 Minutes wants to interview me. I want you there so that we've got a verification or confirmation of what was actually said in case editing comes out, makes me look like an idiot, which is not the toughest thing to do, but nonetheless, I want to get the message out in an unfiltered fashion.
All right. Well, bad news. The camera situation has not been resolved. My camera just dropped off as well. So I'll just put that screen placeholder up there while we finish our conversation. I can still see the chat, Pete, and I do want to throw a couple more points out here. One person said, Susie, please don't do the Atlantic next. Don't feed the animals. And that's kind of right. I mean, I kind of feel the same way about this with the conversation we're having. Another one says exactly what I was saying. As soon as she pulled out a recording device, if she were to have revealed it, it probably would have ended the interview right then and there. Yeah, because they want to do deceptive, interviews and present them in ways that are not real. And that is the only way to push back against it. You were right to do it. And anybody else, if they're going to try to spin the conversation a certain way, that you can pull up and prove, what actually went on in that case. So Pete, I want to see if I can share one thing with you here. And this would be Vice President J.D. Vance. Now, this is a long clip. It's a 4-minute clip. We're not going to listen to the whole thing, but he was asked about the Susie Wiles interview and specifically about the alleged criticism that Susie Wiles levied at the vice president. And here's how that went.
Vice President Jacob Bogage from the Washington Post, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Same to you.
Unfortunately, I have to ask a bit of an off-topic question from affordability because news events do intervene, and that is the interviews that White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles gave to Vanity Fair, in which she's quoted as referring to you as, excuse me, and again, not my words, sir, but a conspiracy theorist of a decade, and described your transformation from someone who once opposed President Trump to now his vice president as an act of political expediency. And I'd like to give you the chance to respond to that, sir.
Well, first of all, if Susie, I'll trust what you said. I haven't looked at the article. I of course have heard about it, but conspiracy theorist. Sometimes I am a conspiracy theorist, but I only believe in the conspiracy theories that are true. And by the way, Susie and I have joked in private and in public about that for a long time. For example, I believed in the crazy conspiracy theory back in 2020 that it was stupid to mask 3-year-olds at the height of the COVID pandemic, that we should actually let them develop some language skills. I believed in this crazy conspiracy theory that the media and the government were covering up the fact that Joe Biden was clearly unable to do the job.
I'll stop it here, Peter, because quite obviously you can see what we have in our hands here. This guy 3 years ago was not a politician, and now he is one of the most polished guys. Let me get him back off the screen. He is one of the most polished guys and handles these questions with just extraordinary professionalism. What is your take on how he's handling the Susie Wiles?
Oh, I think, J.D. Vance is the reason why he's vice president at such a young age with such a relatively short political resume is because he is, a talent, a big time political talent. And he's going to get better and better. Extremely smart guy. I think that in the next presidential election, it's too early. I mean, we're only not 10 months into the current term of President Trump's last term. But if you were to place betting odds, the odds are that the vice president, a sitting vice president, is one of the favorites to be the nominee the next time around. And I think that's true. And I think an almost unbeatable team would be Vance Rubio. The Democrats don't have anybody who can even remotely approach the ability of those two guys to speak extemporaneously, to cite facts, to make a cogent argument. They are true superstars. Gavin Newsom, who's one of the likely nominees, or Kamala Harris, who's a complete joke, as we've talked about before, they can't even come close, not even close. And even if the media enhances their visibility and their responses and makes them seem as if they're not completely idiotic, which many of them are, they're not going to be able to beat that duo, not in any kind of a debate. What you saw during the last presidential term or last presidential cycle, when J.D. Vance debated Waltz, it was a disaster for the Democrats. He completely eviscerated him, and I think something similar.
He did so with kindness, though. That's what made it so amazing. He didn't he could have just sledgehammered him, and instead he was respectful and deferent and just beat him with kindness. And Walz didn't know what to do because he was expecting a fist fight, and JD came in there and just completely undermined all of that with a presidential type, a presidential type of demeanor and just beat him with the facts instead of with loud vociferous rhetoric.
Precisely right. And Rubio's the same way. Those two guys are superstars. The Democrats don't have a bench like that, and they're going to have to really lean on the media to make them seem whoever their nominees are, make them seem as if they can come even close to Vance and Rubio. So we've got a pretty deep bench, and it's not just them. We've got other folks on the sidelines too. And but I do think that's probably going to be the ticket, or if it's not, one of those two guys is clearly going to be on the ticket. And I would suspect both of them will. And I feel pretty confident about their abilities, unless some, it's a long time between now and the next election. All kinds of bad things can happen beyond the control of the administration. And nonetheless, right now, things are looking very good for Republicans. If I were a Democrat looking at my bench, not just on the national level, but on the state level, I would be very, very frightened. And in addition to which, I'd be frightened because the topics, their platform is getting worse and worse and worse. It seems like they are tone deaf, and a lot of that is because they have been insulated by the media, and they haven't been told that there's the echo chamber that they're involved in doesn't tell them how far removed they are from the ordinary interests of Americans.
The only thing that I would say to disagree with that is, losing in 2026. If we lose the midterms and the last 2 years of the Trump term don't allow JD and Marco to do great things because the entire government is going to be taken up with investigations and impeachments, probably of all of them. They'll try to impeach Trump. They'll try to impeach Hegseth. They'll try to impeach Noam and just about every other prime member of the cabinet. And that's the issue that I have, Pete. If the 2 years are wasted and the agenda is not implemented, they're probably going to win in 2028 as well. The Democrats will, no matter whether it's a great team like Rubio, Vance, Rubio, or DeSantis becomes a part of that picture again in some way, because I think he's still phenomenal. You know what I mean? If they destroy the last 2 years of the Trump term, there will not be a next four for us. And that means I hate to be redundant, but we lose the Republic.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right, no doubt about that. But that's a phenomenon that pertains to almost every election cycle. And given that fact, and given the fact that I think all Republicans now are a lot more wary, a lot more savvy when it comes to dealing with the media, and we expect that. That's baked into our calculus of what our chances are in the next election. And having said that, I think Vance Rubio is a dynamite ticket, and whatever ticket they come up with, whether it's Newsom and Harris or whoever it is, can compete, even with the duplicity and the of the media and the media bias. I think, we face that all the time as Republicans, every single time. It's more pronounced now. But the problem for Democrats is you can't paper over stupid. You can't paper over the fact that screwed up the economy, they screwed up foreign policy administration. We're digging out from underneath it right now. And I think the two folks that we're talking about, Vance and can make the case better than anybody else. And I think the media will not succeed in distorting what the record is or their ability to show that they are, in fact, a better team than whatever the Democrats come up with.
God willing, that is the case. Peter Kirsanow, it was an adventure here, man, between your camera and mine and all kinds of other tech glitches, but we will fix them, and hopefully we can count on you next week. We'll pick a day, but I want to get back into the same routine we've had for the last 11 years and talking to you at least once a week, and I may work you like a rented mule and make you come on more than once a week if you're willing.
No, fun, Bob. This is great, by the way. I just want to compliment you. Yeah, we're friends, and I would say nice things anyway, but this is truly extraordinary. Based on what I've seen in terms of similar formats, Bob, this is a home run on your first outing. I think everyone else who does this has got to be concerned that their sponsors can go to you.
Well, Peter, that's always kind of you to say those things, and I really do appreciate it, and they are reciprocated. You've been such a stalwart part of this show on terrestrial radio for so very long. I want to keep it going here on the Rumble channel, so we'll count on talking to you again next week. And enjoy the president's address tonight.
Oh yeah, it'll be whatever it is. It's going to be entertaining. Whenever Donald Trump opens his mouth, you can expect it's going to be entertaining. You can know what the reaction from the left is going to be, right? He could say everybody's going to get $100,000 tomorrow, and the left will go absolutely ballistic and tell us why that's the worst thing in the history of the world. The world's going to come to an end. So I think they keep going back to the same playbook with extremely diminishing returns. They haven't figured out how to beat Trump, other than doing things like they did in the previous election cycle. But I think people are getting I think they're getting wise to their machinations.
Well, we will enjoy the show tonight, and then I will talk to you about it again next week, Peter. Thank you, my friend.
Bob, congratulations on the new format. This is phenomenal.
Thanks, buddy. All right, that's Kirsten now, and that is going to wrap for us for today. I want to apologize again for the glitches. Still don't know why. We're going to have to have some conversations with the Rumble folks, and I'm going to have to probably hire a tech guy, which is, by the way, the point of all of this too. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Again, I didn't get a chance to spend a lot of time in there with you to take a look at anybody that's clicking the Rumble Rants button, the little $ down there to make donations. But and there the camera goes again. Son of a gun. Just is the camera gone or what just went? No, it isn't. Okay, sorry, it's in delay. But I want to say thank you to everybody who is participating. Thank you to everybody who's watching. Thank you to everybody who's chatting. And thanks to everybody who is donating. That Rumble Rant button down there is a way to go. And if you look at the show description, and it's also going across the screen as well, there are all the different ways. We are solely and totally independently funded now. Okay, this is Patriot funded. There's no corporation behind me. If we don't get what we need to build this thing, then it's going to die and we're not going to have the impact we want. So those who have already contributed, thank you. If you would contribute on a monthly basis, a recurring monthly basis on this, it will help us stay on the air and then reach what I need. Like I said, we've tripled our number of followers in the last 2 shows. Well, today's the 3rd show. We need to continue that growth. We need to get the number up over 1,000 followers. We need to get the number of subscribers up to 1,000 as well, so that we can indeed keep pushing and making a difference. We have to counter the narrative that Pete talked about for this entire hour from the mainstream media, the lamestream media, and we only do that by reaching more people. So again, follow and subscribe to the channel, donate if you can, and just as importantly as any of the above, share the information on your social media platforms. Whatever accounts you have, share the fact that we are here. Share the videos, of today's show or yesterday's show, but do what you can to make sure more people know about what we're doing and why we're doing it. All right. Tomorrow on the program, I believe we're going to speak with attorney Tom Renz, who is an activist as well as an attorney. We're going to react to President Trump's address tonight as well. There'll be more fallout from some of today's stories. So make sure you join us tomorrow morning sharp, 10 o'clock sharp. And just know, by the way, and I did read the chats during some of the commentary about when and if we have to move the show to the evening hours. Okay. And that's entirely possible. That it's coming soon, where we have to move it to the evening hours, and then we replay the video the next day during these hours. Let me know how you feel about that. Put something in the chat or send me an email to bob@strictlyspeaking.org. bob@strictlyspeaking.org. I'll get that up on the page one of these days on the screen to let me know how you feel about that. But it might be a necessity. It might be a necessity that we got to do some other things in the daytime, and we may not be able to record the show until the evenings, and we'll play it back for you the next day. But whatever that is, we'll keep you posted. I will keep your opinions in mind as we go through that. All right. Thanks for watching Strictly Speaking Unfiltered. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Bye-bye.